Check.
All right, here we are. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another fun-filled, fun-packed episode of Conversations About ... This is what I usually refer to as the solo shows, where I get the chance to interview awesome creative people. And today is no exception. I get the opportunity to interview Daphne. Now, I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Daphne
Lage.
Lage.
Yeah,
Okay.
people are always thrown off by four letters. They think it's so short, so it must be complicated.
Yeah, but I'd rather ask because I don't want to just
Yeah.
assume like, oh, it must be this way. Like, come
Right.
on,
Yeah.
better
No,
than
it's
that.
Lage. It's Lage.
So, I mean, I've got a simple name. It's Will. It's not that hard to figure out. Like,
You'd be amazed. You'd
you
be
know.
amazed, you know.
Although I did have somebody ask me to spell Holland once for them, and I was just like, Holland, like the Dutch country. And they're like,
Right.
no, we didn't ask you to compare it to something. We asked you to tell us how to spell
I
it. And I'm like,
Which means
you
that they
don't.
didn't know how to spell the Dutch country either.
So you don't know how to spell. Okay, just
Yeah.
so we don't spell things. All right, good to know. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I always like to start off my podcast when it deals with talking to creative people. I always like to get to know a little bit about them first because I understand, not everybody wakes up and they find out that their cousin is Superman. And then they
Right.
end up
Yeah.
getting sent to a place. And then, like, oh, she was in suspended animation for all this time. So now she gets to Earth and Superman's older than she is, but she's his older cousin. That type of thing. You know, but everybody has an origin story at some point. So if you would please share yours, anything you geeked out to growing
Oh,
up, anything cartoons, comics, anything like
right.
that.
Oh, no,
Anything like
yeah.
that.
I have a very specific origin story,
Okay.
and that's like, I've always grown up with comics, but not in the way like American mainstream does. It's like, I
Yeah.
read like children's comics and whatnot, Uncle Scrooge and and all the Disney comics, and but it never like it was never like, oh, this is what I want to do type of thing. I mean, because it was just something that everybody read, so it wasn't
Right.
a big deal. But one day, at a supermarket, it's like they changed the name of the supermarket, but it's still there. I was walking in one of the aisles and I saw a spinner rack, and I saw the first issue of Rocket Raccoon by Mike Mignola on that spinner rack.
That is a
And
classic episode.
yeah, and
Classic issue.
I just something happened in that moment where it's like something clicked where it's like they can look like this. Yeah.
Mike Mignola art will do that to you.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like hooked ever since. That it's like I didn't understand what I was looking at, but I knew like this is what I wanted to do. And then it's like combined with finding the first volume of the Starblaze edition of ElfQuest at a
Okay.
Barnes and Noble, combined those two together, and I was just like, I don't know what this is, but I'm gonna do it.
Right. And ElfQuest is one of those really interesting books. Wendy it's a husband and wife team, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah.
Wendy, I don't remember Wendy Pina, I think, and I can't think of the other
Oh, it's
person.
Richard and Wendy Peeney.
Okay, Peony. There
Right.
we go.
Although I'm also kind of guessing that that's how they pronounce their last name.
If I ever get them on the show, I'll let you know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Uh-huh.
But
But that book was heavily influential. I mean, it's like, people tell me all the time, they look at my comics and they go, "Oh, you were an ElfQuest fan, weren't you?" Like to this day, and I go, "Yep." I'm not denying it.
yeah, and it's not a bad thing to be a fan of,
Right. Yeah.
So it'd be different if you were like, well, I was a fan of the Ren and Stimpy comics growing up, so I wanted to create something of that ilk.
Right. Yeah. I mean that's like, yeah, that the style aesthetic of that is so different, but it's like,
Very.
yeah,
And so you saw Mike Mignola's artwork on Rocket Raccoon, and you
yeah,
saw ElfQuest at a
yeah.
Barnes and Noble. And so how did that take you to the next? What kind of other stuff How did you?
Well,
I'm going to ask it this way: how did
okay.
you go down that bunny trail?
The rabbit hole.
No rabbit hole.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, I mean, it's like it was the thing that started solidifying that it's like, you know what, this really was something I wanted to do, but I had really no idea how to do it. I only knew, I mean, it's like I went to Catholic grade school, so the trajectory is a little different, you know.
Okay.
So I only knew that it's like, okay, you know, where am I going to go with this? And then it's like I found out about the High School of Art and Design.
Mhm.
And it was the only art school that I knew of. So I was like, okay, so that's the school I want to go to. Like I didn't know anything else. I just knew I just made all of a sudden I became like laser focused in getting into that school.
It's educated
Which
at school of law.
yeah, you know, so got into that school. And then it's like by my sophomore year, a friend of mine had asked if I had wanted to join a comic book company that a friend of his was putting together at the time. And mind you, this was
Okay.
back in the 80s, just to, you know, just to
That's
give
yeah.
a
The
timeline,
time
how
context.
long this timeline is. And I didn't even think about it because it's like I said, you know, because I don't know, it didn't occur to me that, you know, someone just asked you to join a comic book company, and to me it was just like completely normal. So it's like, yeah, of course, sure, I'll do it.
Right, right.
Because it's like, you know, it's like I was really big into also it's like another big influence of mine was The Secret of Nim by Don Bluth.
Mhm.
So it's like, just imagine Rocket Raccoon, Secret of Nim, ElfQuest all merging together into one art style, you know. So it's like I was drawing like funny animals all over the place, and he was telling me, he's like, yeah, he's trying to do this comic, and he needs somebody who could draw animal people, and you're the only one we can find because everyone else is doing superheroes and stuff. So I said, yeah, sure. And I started working on, so it was JD Calderon who was writing a book called Tall Tales, which is to this day the book that I still work on.
Right.
And after a couple of iterations, we printed our first book in well, it was an anthology book in 92, I think it was.
Okay.
And that was like my first real published book. And then it was just like, that was it. There was no stopping me. It's like, this is what I wanted to do. And
Mhm.
I've been working on Tall Tales ever since.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And so I got to look at some of the artwork for Tall Tales, and when I first started seeing it, I was like, wow, so this is like, to me, this is kind of my frame of reference. So I was like, okay, so Battle Beast mixed with
Oh,
little gummy bears,
right.
mixed with a whole lot of Dungeons and Dragons, the cartoon.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, I guess it's like depending on what your reference is what you're seeing in
Mhm,
this. And it's like, and it's all good. It's all good. Cause it's like, cause what's funny is that when I first started working on the book, it was originally started as Disney's Robin Hood meets Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It was supposed to be like a comedy type thing,
mhm.
but that was because it was the idea of somebody else, but that somebody else like ended up like doing something else and then ended up leaving, and then me and JD were like, well, he's like, you know, do we really want to do Monty Python? And he goes, no. So
Yeah.
it ended up morphing into more Disney's Robin Hood meets Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
So that's more what like that's what we like what we kind of like ended up with, you know, Narnia and stuff. But yeah, no, gummy bears is that's yeah, because it's like that's fine. That's in the end, it's like a whole bunch of things just rolled into one, and a lot of in like the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, a lot of those influences ended up, you know, in the book anyway. So any comparison is correct technically.
Yeah.
uh,
Okay. And so I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you kind of breaking that out for me and helping me out with more of y'all. Of course, you said Robin Hood meets Monty Python. I need
yeah,
a scene laid out somehow now where I need the character that basically was Baloo, which was Little John, walking through the forest, but he's saying,
yeah.
"Bring out your dead," instead of
Right,
"Defeated
yeah,
that foolish
exactly,
foe."
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that
it was supposed to look more like that, and we were like, no, we don't want to do that.
we want to do something different, and we have
Yeah,
the chance to do
exactly.
something
Yeah, like this
different.
was, like I said, this was more like in line with my interest with Don Bluth's work on The Secret of
Mhm.
Nim, which was my main reference point. So, yeah, so that's yeah, the Monty Python thing didn't stick.
Yeah. Now, you do a lot of painting with your work. I've seen some of your stuff on YouTube and things like that. You do a lot more of a hand drawn, hand
Yeah,
painted style deal. So that's really interesting because I know a lot of people are switching over to more of a digital format with a
yeah,
lot of their
yeah.
stuff and everything. And it's just beautiful the way you're taking
Uh,
your art and you're painting it, you're going through it being it's almost like the artwork lives for you,
yeah.
and so as you're doing the work, it becomes something that can live for other people. So I really appreciate that as an
Thank
artist.
you, thank you.
But
Not that I have anything against digital artwork. It's just that I mean, it's like my skill set predates the computer. So,
mhm. Right,
so I mean, it got incorporated in certain places, but with the actual artwork itself, aside from like the coloring, which is flat, like flat anime style coloring anyway.
right.
Um, I prefer to do everything by hand. I mean,
Mhm.
that's just what I'm comfortable with. I mean, it works for me, and in certain aspects, it's faster. So it's like it's like it's like the process is tough enough for me as is. I don't need to add all these learning curves on top of it too.
Right. And if
So
you're trying to do more of a Don Bluth style of
mhm,
artwork, then you're not
yeah,
gonna do as digital anyway. Yet, could you mimic it? Possibly.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure there's ways to do it, but as far as actually going through and doing it with that more of a cell shaded style,
right, yeah.
you're gonna wanna do it more hand based and so
Right,
forth.
yeah, because it's like I mean, you can imitate the technique in digital, and I've seen people, like, completely, like, rock that, like, it looks hand drawn, you wouldn't know. If they didn't tell me, I wouldn't know. But yeah, but for me personally, it's like, unless I'm getting my hands dirty, it doesn't feel right.
Right, right, right. And so with stuff like Tall Tales, and then also you're doing, I believe it's is it Egoraven?
Egoraven, yes.
Egoraven?
Egoraven, Heir of the First Unicorn, is a book that I'm premiering on Kickstarter as a full color series in January 4th, 2021, which is
Okay.
kind of weird to say 2021, but um,
It's not too far away.
yeah, I know. I know. It's it's strange. I have to keep remembering it's 2021, not 2020.
Mhm,
And I do have the first 5 issues of it on my website, but it's complete. But it's in black and white. And as I'm preparing it for Kickstarter and coloring it, I'm also making additional changes to it. So,
mhm,
like, people can see it for free already on my website. If they go to Tall Tales, TIILS online.com,
mhm.
there's a link there to it so they can check it out. So when the Kickstarter comes out, they're kind of like already familiar with it, but the Kickstarter is going to be like a completely different format. It's
Right,
full color, it's 32 pages, it's I tweak the dialogue or the story a bit, and so but at least they can experience it first,
yeah.
you know.
And also it gives them a launching pad for it
Yeah.
too. So that's a good thing.
Yes. Uh-huh. Same thing with Tall Tales. I mean, if they go to the website, they can also read Tall Tales for free too. So it's all there. No risk.
Yeah. I think we were talking before we began the recording, we were talking a little bit about the time frame where cons were really a thing and we were going
Yeah.
to the cons, and of course, with 2020 and everything that's been going on,
Yeah.
haven't really been able to do that as much.
Yeah.
So have you been able to participate in any virtual cons or anything
I've
like
I've
that
been
this year?
kind of seeing them. I mean, what's funny is that when the lockdown happened, I started participating more in just general podcasts. Which is funny because it was just that entire thing was something I was literally trying to avoid for the longest time because it's like, I don't know, I just have a lot of hangups. But the problem is it wasn't a problem. So what happens, like, I just started participating, and then what happened was that I just started getting used to it. And so in the end, it wasn't that I had a hang up, it's just that I wasn't used to it. So I
Mhm.
started seeing all these online conventions. I'm still trying to wrap my head around them, but eventually it's something that I wanna start participating in more because, yeah, at the rate this is going, this is probably gonna be something we're gonna be dealing with, well, probably for the next year and a half.
At least.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I could wish that it wasn't, but,
Yeah, exactly, you know?
and do what we can, but I mean, that's
Yeah.
part of the interesting part of this thing.
Right, yeah, that's yeah.
So I'm gonna switch gears a bit
Okay.
because I want to talk with you now, kind of about what we initially were
Okay.
going to talk about.
Uh,
So this is the fun stuff. This is
uh-huh.
where the skillet gets added to the fire. We start popping the popcorn. So I'm gonna preface this with a story. So I used to be a very huge, big time Photoshop guy.
Right. Yeah,
I mean,
that's my main program too.
I think Photoshop 7. I eventually migrated over to Photoshop 10, I think. Uh, then I had a laptop, and so a friend of mine let me get. I think it was there was another program that wasn't quite the full Photoshop, but it let you do
Oh, yeah, I
Photoshop
remember
type
that one.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I had that on. Well, then when I got my most recent laptop, of course, they don't have disk drives on them. So I messaged Adobe. I was like, hey, I have this version of Photoshop on my prior computer. It died. This is the passcode for it. How can I get a copy of Photoshop on my new computer? And they're like, oh, well, this is a fake copy of it anyway. No, it's not. I'm holding the disc.
No,
I've got
that
the
was
box.
no.
Like I've got the legit stuff right here. I'm literally holding it. I shot a picture. I sent it to them on email. This is the box that came in. This is the thing.
Yeah.
This is the barcode. And they're like, well, no, it's not an original copy. It's like,
Yeah.
uh-huh. So
Yeah.
then, like a month later, I was like, okay, so there was a place selling it online, and it was like I think it was $35 for I think it was Adobe Photoshop.
LE, I think. I think it's Photoshop LE. I'm trying to remember too.
Yeah. And so they sent me that one, and
Mhm.
I had it on for about 4 months, and then the next thing you know, I started getting the flash up warnings from Adobe saying, "Hey, this isn't a registered version." I'm like, "Yes, it is. Here's the key code
Yeah.
that they sent me. You know, this is a fake copy. How is it that this is the second fake copy of this that I've gotten when the first one I got that's official Adobe in the box, and then this one's from another company that's selling the program with the stuff that they sent me here.
Right.
How both it is fake? Like I can't be this oblivious. Like
It
you're,
it was it was it's a it was I remember when all that happened.
you know,
Because a lot of graphic designers were getting hit, professional graphic designers were getting hit with that. And what it is was that it was Adobe trying to force everybody onto the cloud.
right?
Get you have to get the subscription. I mean, I don't know why they didn't just tell you that.
Yeah.
But what they were doing was that they were knocking out everybody's serial numbers to force them to go onto the cloud.
Hmm.
So that's the reason why I have, it's like if you look online, there is instructions on how to keep your copy of Photoshop from talking to Adobe so that they're not snitching on you.
Right. Right.
So that's kind of what I do to keep my copies still
Yeah.
functioning.
Which is weird because you feel like you're doing something illegal for something
No, they're not.
legal.
You're not. You're
It's something
not.
legal, but you're having to do it because the people that own the thing don't want you to use the thing that you bought
Right. Yeah.
for because they want you to go by it for a subscription service.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So I started looking at it. They were like, we can offer you this much, due to what you've been going through, we can offer you 3 months free or whatever. I'm like, okay, this still seems like a lot of money
Yeah, because it is. It is.
because I was looking at okay, because I had never used Illustrator. I primarily just used Photoshop, but I started to realize as I was printing and producing a bunch of books, I was like, I need to learn Illustrator. I
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
start learning how to because when I'm making these PDFs of stuff, it's not coming out right. And I
Yeah.
was using like Microsoft Word to do a lot of them. It's just like
Oh
it's not
yeah.
coming out
No.
right at
Yeah.
all. And so then I was like, well, what am I going to do? Because I don't want to pay, upwards. I think I calculated at one point it's like almost $200 to $300 a year
Yeah.
to
And you
use
don't
photo.
own the program.
You don't
And
own it.
that's you don't own it. And when they do updates, if you have any customized settings or brushes, it
It's
deletes
all
everything.
yep. It's
That was
all
it.
gone.
That was recently. It was like you heard designers scream around the world when the last
Yeah.
update happened.
So here's what happened. Um, I interviewed for the podcast. I interviewed the guys from Saturday AM. And so they were talking about like they had just gotten this really nice deal
Yeah.
for clip
Studio Paint.
studio paint.
Yeah.
where they were offering like 3 free months
Yeah.
of it. And then it was like, and one of the artists was telling me, he's like, bro, he said, just wait till about the middle of end of the year. They will drop a sale. You can get this program for like $25.
Yeah, yeah. So usually it's July and New Year's
And I
that
was just
the
like,
big sales are. Yeah.
do what?
Yeah.
$25 for it? They were like, yeah. And then you can upgrade it to the next level if you want to do like pro, like big time pro, like manga and stuff like
Yeah.
that come with a lot of screen time. So I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. So I got that, and then I was like, okay, so what else is out there? Because I gotta find out alternatives because I tried using, I think it was Escape, and of course,
Right.
like you've got to go like find YouTube tutorials just to
Right.
understand how that works.
Yeah.
But then I found Affinity Publishing, which is like an alternative version of Illustrator, or not Illustrator, but the one where you do layouts
Oh, InDesign.
and
InDesign.
design. And
Mhm.
so it's just like $40,
Yeah, exactly.
and I
Exactly.
own it. And I'm like, okay, I'm
You're right.
good. I've got Clip Studio Paint, and I've got
Yeah.
Affinity Publishing, and I'm
Mhm.
good to go.
Yeah.
Because now I've been laying out my stuff, and I've been working as I've been doing my Sketchtober stuff. I was like, okay, I need to make this look better. I need to make this look crisper because if I want to eventually do a Kickstarter, if I want to eventually
Mhm.
do other stuff, I've got to learn this stuff so I can make
Yeah.
it look good out the gate.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Which fast forwards us to Comic Blast.
Oh boy.
I looked up the lady that was in the video, and all her LinkedIn stuff was all like Adobe Senior Editor, Adobe this, Adobe that. I'm like,
Right.
lady, you've never made a comic book before
No,
in your
not at
life.
all.
Like, why
Not
are
at all.
you telling me, making comic books is hard? I'm like,
Well, yeah, if you don't know how to
okay,
do it.
anybody that's ever done it can tell you this. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to, like, this program, is it part of the suite? Because I couldn't figure out like how to get this program.
Well, okay, so from what I was like, that's the funny thing about the internet. You rant first, right? And then it's like, and then as it kind of like the anger kind of waves off, you kind of start to realize maybe we've kind of been had by Adobe. But you know uh so what I understand about this program is that it was, I guess this is going to be a release in 2021 as part of their suite. I guess if you have
Right.
like the full subscription, this thing is just going to pop up and you're going to have access to it. But I guess like they released this video. Now, the thing is though, I don't know how this video was distributed. I know that people obviously found it and started spreading it around themselves because I certainly wasn't looking for it. It came to me. So, and then it's like, and then all hell broke loose pretty
Yeah,
much when
it
this
came to
video
me
came
on
out.
Facebook, like Facebook, somebody in like an independent
Yeah.
comic book artist group was just like, anybody seen this?
Right. Yeah. So what happened, of course, is that like every comic book person worth their salt flipped the lid, and from what we can tell, Adobe released a statement saying that the program was misrepresented. It wasn't supposed to be out like that, and this, that, and the other thing. And we don't know if they're going to even release it or not. And so I guess like for your audience who don't know, it's like this is supposed to be a program that's supposed to like making comic books easy.
Right.
But easy for who, I don't know, because it's like if you don't know how to make a comic book, you don't know what you're looking at. And
Mhm.
if you do know how to make a comic book, you still don't know what you're looking at
Right.
because I don't know who they consulted to make this program. And it's supposed to like use AI learning, and it's like you put your script in, it makes the word balloons for you, it makes the gutters for you, and then it's like, oh, when you just have to plop in the artwork and it inks for you and it colors for you. um and it's like I like and then yeah, it's like, and then it's like at this point it's like I don't even know, like, okay, which direction do you want to go in with this conversation, because I ended up making a 30-minute rant video going point by point as to why this program is a horrible idea, the
Yeah.
way it's being presented right now. I'm
Mhm.
not saying the program is a bad idea in general, but
Right.
the way it's being presented right now is absolutely horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's like as everything began to cool down and I started like noticing other things about this, and it's like, I think we were just part of a whole free R&D session with Adobe. They wanted to see how we would react to it. So we were like we were pretty much um a global focus group, except
Mhm.
we didn't consent to be a focus group. It's
And or
like,
get paid to be part of
oh,
it.
right, exactly. So it's like, so they got the reaction that they did, and then I guess they're going to move forward with that information. So yeah. So there's a lot to say about this program.
Yeah. So first of all, kids, and I say kids, I'm
You're
normally
right.
referring to a different era. It's not that I'm calling people
Yeah, I
little
know.
kids. But first of all, kids, here's the thing. If you put a comic book together of any type, you're gonna have a writer who writes a script.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have a script writer because sometimes the writer may not know how to write a script. So then
Oh
they
yeah,
get the
true.
script
Yeah,
writer. So then
yeah.
the script writer writes the script. Okay, usually, unless you're me, because I tend to draw stuff out and then script it afterwards. That's
Right.
just the
Yeah.
way I kind of operate. So then you go from script person to then you go, okay, you've got your artist. Now the script's job is to tell the artist what to do
Yeah. Pretty much.
for the
Pretty
most
much. Yeah.
part, depending
Yeah.
on the style, depending on where you are. Some
Right.
scripts are loose. Some scripts will say,
Yeah.
hey, we want, let's just pick a character. It'll say, we want Invisible Man to run to the nearest grocery store to pick up a carton of milk.
Yeah.
And when he
Yeah.
gets to the grocery store, there's a robbery going on. So
Yeah.
Invisible Man has to fight the robber, but not tip him off to the fact he's there unless he
Right.
gets shot or somebody else gets shot. And
Right.
then they
Yeah.
just leave it blank, and it's like, okay, however the artist chooses to do it,
Right. Yeah. It depends on
you
how
know,
much trust you have, because it's like you can either do that or you can go in the complete opposite way where you're like doing a script like Alan Moore, where you're thumbnailing
yeah.
as you're writing the script so that the artist knows exactly what to draw according to the script. So,
Mhm. Always got love for Alan Moore. He's a
yeah.
little kooky, but I always got love for
Yeah.
somebody who can
Yeah.
write as detailed as he does. So then
Uh-huh.
you take it from there and you go, okay, now I got my artist. So my
Right.
artist is gonna draw out the stuff that the script lays out.
Right.
So then I've got my inker over here. My inker is now gonna go in and ink that stuff. And no,
Right.
inkers aren't tracers. Uh,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
if you go back and listen to the Walden Wong episode, when
Yeah.
we talk about Mike Mignola, see, we always get back to things.
Right. It's always
Uh,
always Mike.
Mike Mignola and how his inking changes the composition that he does. So inks change the composition.
Yeah.
They should. Now, once you go to that level, then you've got usually your letterers. Sometimes you've got people who will place the boxes, and then the letterers will go ahead and place the boxes. In most cases, in real life, those layers are going to be over the layers. So when you're saving them, you're not wanting it to compress. But
Right.
if it
Yeah,
compresses,
exactly.
it gets really ugly when it gets printed out and all that stuff. You don't want that. So that's kind of the way the normal format works. And then, of course, you got your other people, you got your colorists, you got your other
Right.
people that are involved in the comics go together to make one book,
Yeah, exactly. It's a
just
team effort.
one.
It's a team effort.
Mhm. And normally, of course, with a regular title, you've got a month, because you're going ahead a month because in most cases, most of your books are monthly. You got
Right.
some
Yeah.
that are bi-monthly. When you're DC and you want to do something really adventurous, you go for a weekly book. Uh, but anyway, or do future state. That's a whole different story. Uh, but so all these things are required to put it together.
Yeah.
Now, this program, which first of all, the thing that bothered me was she talked about, I think either she or the print ad for it
Right.
talked about being an archaic method,
Well, primitive was the word that they used.
primitive method of doing
I mean,
comics.
I think I would have been I don't know if I would have been less offended if they had used archaic, but primitive was just a little too much. It's
Yeah,
like
like, to be honest, it's like, what if they had just said, "Hey, we know comic books in the past take a lot of work. It takes a
Right.
lot of people. But
Mhm.
what if you're that person? What if you're that one guy
Right.
that wants to release an independent comic book and you don't
Right.
have a team of 12 people?
Right.
What if you had a program that could take the script that you write for your comic and help you lay out stuff like lettering,
Right.
lay out
Yeah.
stuff like sound effects and things like that? That way it speeds up your time as a one-man show because
Right.
then you're able to release stuff. If you want to release a web comic, for example, if you
Right.
want to release a project for your Indiegogo or your Kickstarter or something like that, and you want to get stuff out quicker, these are things you could use Comic Blast for because
Right.
we could take the comics that you're doing and blast the speed in which you
Right.
need in order to put those things together. That's what you call a focus group.
Well,
That's what
right.
you hire for.
Right. And the way you're explaining it, it's like, yeah, that's exactly what would be cool, if we had. But like I said, the presentation and I think the program itself is still very raw because there was a lot of things that they didn't explain in the video. Like she spent all the time talking about the lettering and the boxes, but then
Mhm.
she just plops in the artwork and it just gets inked by
Yeah,
itself and then the colors just appear.
yeah. Like,
And then
how that
there's
happened.
no talk about what exactly the final product looks like. I mean,
Right.
is this for print? Is this for web comics? I mean, and even for the type of comic, it's like, the size ratio is like, well, is this for manga? It's like, what are you? That's not comic book size. That's not standard comic book size. In the United
What if
States
you
at
want
least.
to do a manga? Can you do a manga in this program?
Right, exactly. So they left a lot of questions unanswered while trying to like build up excitement. And it's like I said, it's like if we know what we're looking for, we were not excited. we were
Mhm.
not, there was potential, because like in the end, I mean, it's like it's easy, to to rant about this program in and of itself. But to be fair, there is potential. There's an idea there
Mhm.
that that could work. It's just that I don't know what Adobe is doing with the like I mean, yeah, it's like if you watch my video, it's like 30 minutes of me going, what is this? like
Yeah.
Clip Studio Paint exists. So why couldn't you have just built on that? I mean, you're Adobe. I mean, if this was a Microsoft product, nobody would even be paying attention to it because nobody
Yeah.
expects Microsoft to make a design program worth anything.
Mhm.
But Adobe is different. Adobe is an industry standard.
Right.
So why did all of a sudden it's like when there is a very specific industry that could use something like this, why are they getting like super weird and cheap with it? you
Because
know
you gotta make money by spending as less money as possible to do it.
well, that also kind of dovetails into another aspect of that conversation
Mhm.
that I had brought up in my video, which is that that we're in an industry, and any of the creative industries, comic books or advertising, graphic design or whatever, we're in an industry where our ability to do this type of work, to draw, to create or whatever, is highly valued,
Mhm.
but we as the people who are doing it aren't.
Right.
So there's always been this underlying current of how do we have art without artists? And this program kind of like brought up that underlying current for me, that it's like, you know
Man.
what? It's like, it's like that in the end, the conversations in the end is not really about the program, but the overlying attitude
Mhm.
that built a program like that. It's like, oh, you're not an artist, but you want to pretend you are. Here's a program that'll help you do it. And what happens is that it's just another step in the devaluation of us as creators. And it's like, oh, this is a bigger conversation, and it's all about like, well, if I can get an AI to do this, you no longer have a specialized skill. So I
Mhm.
no longer have to pay you for it. I mean, a friend of ours, he works in advertising, and he said that in the last 10, 15 years, he saw the average salary of of art directors go from like six-figure salaries down to like half that.
Mhm.
I mean, and it's like, how are we supposed to function in this type of environment? I mean, it's like we're talking about how it's like how he was saying how it's like it used to be that you learned a new skill and it could last him for like 5 years.
Mhm.
Now he says it doesn't even last 6 months. I mean, he spent a lot of time learning how to create apps only for him to like learn how to create apps, and then everyone goes, "Oh no, no, we've moved on from that now. We don't do apps anymore."
Right.
So it's like yeah, I think that's really the real issue I had with it, that it's just like, oh, just press the magic button and poof, you have a
They
professional comic.
right. Yeah.
Which
She
what we
said
saw
that
on the screen was the last thing that we saw.
yeah, she said that a lot. She said
Yeah.
professional comic a lot.
Yeah.
Now, it reminds me when you said that, and I mean, it took it to a whole different level,
Yeah.
but, it reminded me of that quote that Syndrome has from An
Yeah,
Incredible,
exactly.
where he
Yeah.
says, "When everybody is special, then nobody."
Nobody is. Yeah, exactly. That was exactly what was running through my head too. I mean, it's like that that it's funny because like, I mean, to bring up Pixar movies, it's like I talk a lot with John Celestri on another podcast, and he's an animator from the 80s. I mean, he animated the Boba Fett in the holiday special, and he did
Wow.
She-Ra and She-Man. Ooh, She-Ra and He-Man.
Right, right. I knew where you were going, but it's like, just merge them together.
Yeah, yeah. And and it's like, and even he's, like, he's seeing the same thing happen in animation. I mean, granted, it's like I'm kind of seeing it too, where it's like it used to be where animation, was hand drawn, individual artists, and there were some points where you could actually, if you paid attention watching a movie, you can actually see where different artists are coming in to
Mhm.
do certain characters. Like, just because like Glenn Keane was the main animator on Beast and Belle doesn't mean he animated everything.
Right.
And he did the keyframes or key scenes, and then it's like you could see when another animator came in. I mean, it's like, not dismissing their style, but it's kind of like you can't confuse Mike Mignola with anybody else. It's
Right.
like, it's Mike Mignola. There's a lot of imitators, but a Mike Mignola.
Mhm.
Right. And he says that now that everything's in 3D and computer generated, you don't see that anymore. Now it's not even animators. You have people who are riggers. It's like, and they do like the equivalent of puppetry on the screen. And you don't see that, oh, I see where this animator came in or that animator came in. You don't see that anymore because it's just one computer animated film that
Mhm.
covers the individuality that that used to be present in hand-drawn animation that you don't
Right.
see anymore. Now it's just overall, DreamWorks style or Pixar style or whatnot. And that's kind of, and that's what it is. It's like, how do you have the talent without the artist? I mean, granted, they still need that talent to make these movies, but I know that there's an end game to this,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
and you can even take it one step further because you look at, you mentioned about the how can we get this without the artist? If
Yeah.
you look at the Disney purchase of Marvel,
Yeah.
for example, if you look at the Time Warner purchase with
Mhm.
DC,
Yeah.
they're not looking at creators who create this stuff.
Right.
They're
Mhm.
looking at what did they create.
Yeah.
We can make money off of Batman. We can
Mhm.
make money off of Superman. We can make money off of Spider-Man. We can make
Right.
money off of Doctor Strange, Captain America, Iron
Uh-huh.
Man, Black Widow, all these
Right.
Wonder Woman, different things like that. we could care less who makes the book.
Right, exactly, exactly. And the funny thing is, like, it's especially in comics, I think that attitude kind of started with the creation of Image Comics, and I think that after that happened, Marvel and DC especially started really going out of their way to make sure they never had superstars again. You know, they didn't want to see Image happen again. They didn't want to see artists stand out like that. You know, although that seems to be the case now with writers,
Mhm.
but with artists, definitely. They're like going, it's like, you know what, you guys are a dime a dozen. Anybody can draw Batman, and in the end, it has to do with how well the characters do in the movies. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's like, all right, oh, how cute. Comics is, the comics they make, I don't know, $27 million a year. Well, we can make $1 billion in a weekend off of one movie.
Yeah.
It's like really, it's like, so that's kind of, that's part of the attitude that we're fighting.
Mhm. And I think a lot of that too, really, when you look at it, really has to do with not just the idea of the superstar. 'Cause I mean, if you look at, for example, people will applaud, Tom King, people will applaud Donny Cates,
Right.
but it's like, but I'm looking at, I'm going to the work going, who brought it to life? Like,
Right.
because if I want to read Donny Cates write prose, that's a different situation.
Right.
Comics are a visual medium. So it's like, while I appreciate the writing, good writing that these guys do,
Uh-huh.
you know, I need to see the art behind it.
Right. And that's, yeah, it's like, and that's the thing, because writers are nothing against writers, that, let's not get this confused. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
right,
like
right.
you need the writer to be the catalyst for what happens in the book.
Yeah,
It's like it's like good art can elevate a mediocre writer, but crappy art, you know, can't
yeah,
save anything.
yeah.
It's like, um, but so it's like, but there's this thing where it's like, oh, it's the writer that gets all the attention, and then nobody knows who the artist is.
Yeah.
This was especially noticeable whenever, like, you're talking about graphic novels listed on Amazon, where it's like, if you look up a graphic novel, you can find it under the author,
You can't find
but
another art.
they don't list it under the artist. They don't list books under the artist. So, um, yeah, which is kind of ridiculous. With comics, it should be, both. It's like, that's the team effort
Yeah,
yeah, because it's a comic, it's a collaborative effort. It's visual medium combined with text. It's not a novel. So
right.
it's like, it's a completely different animal, and it shouldn't be treated like, oh, well, it's the writer that counts.
Mhm.
The artist is, again, a dime a dozen.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you look at all these, and I think also, if you talk about Todd McFarlane, I just recently started going back and getting like the old '90s Spider-Man trades. I picked up Torment the other
Mm.
day because I was just like, picked up the original Spawn, because of course you think about it, it's like, okay, we don't want to elevate, quote, the superstars, but yet
Right.
these superstars' names still stand the test of time. I mean,
Right. Yeah. It's like what? It's like, the whole Image thing happened in the 90s. And it's like, and just what, like a couple of months ago, Todd McFarlane raised like $3 million on Kickstarter. I mean,
on an
he did,
action figure
on an action figure. Yeah.
he
I
had
mean,
already proven he could make.
right. Now, mind you, it's like, because this gets overlooked a lot. I mean, because a lot of people like to, like, oh, Todd McFarlane, he's an eccentric goon. But I mean, this is a man who technically changed two industries. It's like he changed comics and he changed toy manufacturing.
Well, yeah,
Toys that we see now, the way they are, the highly detailed, highly articulated and everything, it's
yeah,
because of Todd McFarlane.
mhm,
Because he wanted to see a better standard, better toys. And because of that, every company followed suit.
yeah.
So, yeah, he's not, that's not a name to be forgotten.
No, and I mean, you look at, for example, even, okay, we say Todd McFarlane, which Todd McFarlane. First of all, you got to remember too, Todd McFarlane now has the longest running comic
Yeah.
period
Yeah.
on. Uh, they change art at different times.
Right.
Different things have happened, but he's written a lot of it, and things like that. Even other little side projects he
Right.
did and things like that is still fundamental. You look at Jim Lee. You look at Jim Lee's legacy of work.
Yeah.
You look at that. I'm sorry. People talk about different works that have defined Batman.
Uh-huh.
Okay, if you say okay, Dark Knight Returns. Okay,
Right. Yeah.
standard.
Right.
Um, you look at Killing Joke,
Yeah.
Death of the Family.
Right.
If Hush is not on your list, you need to go back and reevaluate your list.
Yeah.
Hush
Well,
is there.
well, the funny thing is that like I know Dark Knight, I know Killing Joke because they came out when during my formative years,
Yeah.
so I know them as like the iconic works that they are. The Dark Knight, Killing Joke, Watchmen. I know them as the iconic work. But the funny thing is that I'm not really into them. I'm
Okay.
not really into a lot of mainstream stuff. So
Right.
all the new stuff I'm not really familiar with. And the funny thing is like, like I guess it's like because superheroes was never my entry point.
Mhm.
It I guess it's like I never imprinted on that as a common mythology.
Right.
So it's like, oh, it's like, okay, it's like I understand that this is what a lot of people have grown up with, but I don't have that. So um it's not something that I find myself interested. I know of them. I've read some, like like you know what it is? I was more into like uh Green Arrow, the Longbow Hunters.
That's a good
I think that
series.
was Mike Grell,
Mike Grell.
right? I mean, the Batman series that stands out for me is The Cult. I think it was Barry Windsor Smith.
Mhm.
Um, there was well, it's like the Frank Miller stuff, but especially like Weapon X, I think it was Frank Miller that did. No, he
Weapon
did.
X was Barry Windsor Smith, I
Well, was
think.
also Barry Windsor. Yeah, so it's like there's a pattern there, and there was like there's another Wolverine book that I think it was just like the Wolverine origin where he's in Japan that Frank
Okay.
Miller did.
Mhm.
That one stands out. But yeah, I said, what it is, I was mostly a Conan girl. I
Okay.
ended up mostly that. And like right now, it's like I'm really big into French comics and foreign comics. They have what I just find is that they just have a completely different aesthetic that appeals to me more. Especially when it comes to like I don't want to say quality because it's just different. It's just a different type of art aesthetic
Mhm.
that European comics have. And then it's like also the type of stories that I like reading. Like I'm immediately attracted to anything that reminds me of I, Claudius, because it's like that was something that I used to watch over and over and over again as a kid. And if anyone who's watched I, Claudius, it's like, yeah, right. It's like, um, it's like I guess for people who don't know, it's an old BBC series starring pretty much every famous British actor you've ever seen anywhere
Mhm.
from the 80s, like John Hurt and I think like Patrick Stewart was in it, and uh, John Carradine was the lead, and it's like, so European comics tend to, I guess, like tend to have that aesthetic, like that aesthetic more. So
Mhm.
that's what I'm attracted to.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, so technically I don't have Hush on my list.
Fair
I guess
enough.
to go to to take the long route.
And
It's
that's
like, yes, I
fine
don't have
because
Hush on my list. I
right.
kind of don't even know what it is.
Yeah. It's to make it real simple.
uh,
Hush is basically the idea that somebody is pulling the strings in Gotham to have everybody go after Batman. They know
right,
they know Bruce Wayne is Batman. They know all the
uh,
stuff, and so
right,
they're pulling strings to affect all the levels of his
right.
life. Like at
Okay.
one point, he ends up facing who he thinks is Jason Todd. Comes to find out it's Clayface.
Uh huh.
He's at one point he ends up facing a poison ivy mind-controlled version of Superman. And so
Right.
Superman and he are fighting under Gotham
Right.
City
Uh-huh.
and all this other stuff because he can hide in the piping areas because there's lead piping. So you can actually hide in the sewers from Superman. Of course, Superman is just out of his mind, and he's just literally just crashing through everything trying to find Batman. So it's an interesting character study on
Right.
kind of, and they also kind of go into more of the Catwoman Batman relationship. They actually kind of start dating in the
Right.
book and things like that. And so Jim Lee does the artwork for all of it. And so, it's just to boil it down to basics.
Right. Oh, okay. No, because it's funny. Because also, it's like what I was remembering. Like I guess like recently the whole thing about the Batman who laughs. And what's funny is that because I also remembered another book that influenced me, which was Brian Boland's Judge Dredd. Well,
Okay.
the Brian Boland's work on Judge Dredd. Not that he created Judge
Right,
Dredd.
right, right.
I'm not a complete newbie at this.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's so the Batman Who Laughs, I was like, so I would see it, it's like, oh yeah, we all read those issues of Judge Dredd. So yeah, so that's kind of like how out of it I kind of am. you
Yeah, 'cause
know.
wasn't there a judge? Wasn't there one of the judges like Judge Death or something like that?
Yes, and that's what it especially reminded me of, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So I think that with the way they're wrapping up the dark metal and things like that, I think
Yeah.
we're finding out that the Batman Who Laughs is a little bit worse than we thought he was.
Well, he didn't look better than anything, that's
Oh
for
yeah,
sure. I mean,
as far as the story, but then also the
yeah.
fact that now he apparently somehow has access to the powers of Doctor Manhattan
You're right.
because we need that in life. You
Right.
know, I remember I remember back when everybody was talking about the beginnings of Doomsday Clock, and they were like, "Well, Superman's going to be the person that teaches Doctor Manhattan about humanity," and I'm like, "But Superman's the worst person to teach him about humanity." Like, yeah, he was born in Kansas. I get it. He was taught by great human
Right.
people, but he's
Uh-huh.
never been human.
Right, yeah.
He's always had that cushion of the Earth's yellow sun gives me special abilities that nobody
Right.
else has.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, he wouldn't go through the experience
Right.
of getting cut and getting a bruised knee on a playground
Right.
because he would just have to act like he got a bruised knee because he really.
Right.
I was like, dude, to be honest, I said, and they're like, well, who would you have to be? Batman? Well, no, Batman doesn't care about humanity. Batman just cares about the mission. He's like, well, what about Wonder Woman? Wonder Woman technically isn't a human either.
Either, yeah,
She was
it's
molded
like
out of clay. She's a demigod at best.
right, yeah.
How does a demigod teach a god about
Right.
being human? And he's
Right.
like, well, who would be? I said, the Flash.
Because I would be the closest, right?
Because he's the one person that has always been human. Yes, he has the power of the Speed Force, and that gives him ungodly abilities in the land of running fast and other things. But he's still the most human out of the group. If you take the 7 Justice League members, I feel like the Flash is the best. I
Right.
said, but if you're gonna just go off the ranch completely, I said Bob Ross needs to be the one to teach
Right.
him how to do
Well,
humanity.
but you see, but also it's like knowing what I know about Dr. Manhattan, would he even care? you know? And then it doesn't matter how human or not human you are. I mean, it's like, Dr. Manhattan's a sociopath, you
Everything is
know?
meaningless. Boom.
So it's like how in the end it wouldn't matter. It's like he wouldn't respect Superman anyway. And so why would the Flash, all of a sudden, appeal to something that he doesn't have. You know.
I don't know. I mean, again,
Yeah.
it's that whole thing of the difference between the writer versus the artist. It's
Right,
always
yeah.
interesting, good. Because if you look at it on paper, you just write this out in a prose format. Who
Right.
reads that story? You know what I mean? Like if you didn't have Gary Frank just knocking out crazy
Right.
facial expressions and all,
Right, yeah, yeah.
who reads
That's part of the medium. That's why, the whole, I guess like the overhype of writers in comics is kind of silly because it's like it's, it's like, yeah, it's like, they're not printing the scripts. The words have to work with the
Yeah.
artwork,
Mhm.
so it's like, unless it's like you're a completely horrible, like really, it just has to work together,
Yeah.
and it's like, and I really don't like that, like with my book, right? So it's like, it's me and JD who work on this book.
Mhm.
And the one thing that people would tell me sometimes, like they're telling me, like I don't know, like they're being like flattering or something, but it's like, no, that's not how that works. Like, the one comment I would get that would kind of like make me cringe a little is when they say, "Oh, I love the artwork. I haven't read it yet, but I love the book." And I'm like going,
But
you
that's
you
not the
got
book.
half the experience. How
Right.
how can you say you love it? It's like, when you haven't even read it. There's a lot going on in that dialogue.
What
It's
would
not
probably be
just
more
the pictures.
what would probably be more encouraging is if they said, I love the artwork. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but you know what? I would buy in a heartbeat
Right.
if you did an art book on the world of tall tales,
Right, yeah, or
art
something
book
like that.
on
Yeah, because like, I can understand, like, people preferring to look at the artwork. I mean, it's a quick, it's a visual thing. It's like, you have to actually put effort in to read anything.
Mhm.
But to look at artwork, it's just like, you just, whether you like it or not in seconds. But it's like, to tell me that it's like, you love the book, but you never read it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I think you're missing something here.
It's kinda like saying, "I love the hot chocolate that I get at this place," but then it's like, well, the powder is right there, you have to mix that into your hot water.
Right, yeah,
You can't have
or
hot
something
chocolate
like
without the
that,
powder
yeah.
in there, like, why would you put the powder in there? I
Right,
just like looking at the water,
right.
but the hot chocolate could be so good when I drink it. Mix the powder in.
Right, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's just, yeah, it's just kind of weird how it's like, we're in this visual medium, and it's just like, how there are people who just insist on separating the two things that make it unique,
Mhm.
and I don't, I don't understand. I don't understand that attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you talk about writers and how powerful writers have been
Yeah.
positioned and stuff. I saw something the other day where they're talking about Brian Michael Bendis,
Right.
uh, in Super Sons, which is one of my favorite books. Kinda this concept of, okay, what if Superman was a kid? And then what if
Right.
Batman was a kid? Well, instead, we've got Damian Wayne and Jonathan Kent. And so it's kind of their two children trying to work out their stuff. Well, they did this thing, apparently. I didn't know what happened. Like, I looked up and, like, I was, I had my trades of Super Sons. And then I look up, and the next thing you know, DC soliciting this book. And, like, Jonathan Kent's like the leader of the Legion of Superheroes. And, like, he's 16. I'm like, wait, when did that happen? When did this become a soap opera where, like, one day I'm looking at the screen and the little boy is 8? And then the
Right.
next thing you know, he's 15. And the next day, and they're like, well, today playing Jonathan is Johnson.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly.
when did he turn 15? He was 6 yesterday. Yesterday, he was 6 years old. But they did this thing where it was like, oh, well, he went off in Krypton and he was with his grandfather. And during that time, he grew exponentially bigger because of the sun that was in the area or whatever. And then he came back to Earth, and like Lois and Clark are looking at him, and he's like 16. And they're just like, well, granddad's gone crazy. I'm like, but why did we grow him up that quick? Damien is still Damien. Like they have a whole scene where Damien's like, I don't believe you. Who are you? Where is my friend? And he's
Well,
all this.
it's kind of like, I guess, like, what it is that they committed to the idea of these characters as children, and then like they wanted to age them up as quickly as possible, because I guess in the end they really didn't want to write them as children.
Here's the
So,
funny thing.
uh,
First of all, Damien's still a kid.
right,
That
yeah,
never changed. Jonathan isn't a kid because Bendis was writing the Superman book.
uh huh.
Bendis flat out stated he didn't like writing children. So
Oh,
he
okay.
was
So
like,
there was,
"Well,
all
I
right,
need to make him a teenager somehow."
right,
So he came up with a story to make him a teenager. I'm like, "But then you kill the Super Sons because you can't have a teenage 16-year-old running around with a
right.
year old
Which is kind of,
odd."
Right, which is kind of like, part of the argument, another common argument that I hear about, like, crossovers. And then it's like, the Marvel and DC, they love crossovers, they love these event things because it forces you to buy all these
Oh,
books in order to make any
possible.
sense of the
Mhm.
story. And it's like, and you know what? And it's like, and then it's like you have situations like these where I guess if a creator is I guess like powerful enough in the company to say, no, I'm not participating, or I'm going to participate in a way that kind of puts a monkey wrench in your entire event. And then the fans get annoyed.
I'm
you
just
know?
thinking like, why did you do that? Like,
Right.
I know Bendis is recommended as a great writer, but I just don't understand that.
Right.
No, and because I wouldn't have liked it if I didn't love the Super Son stuff. Like the idea of a superpowered kid and a smart alecky kid that just so happens
Right.
to be
Yeah.
Batman running
Like
around.
that would have been like a dynamic worth exploring, but Bendis was like, nah,
That could have been
I'm doing something else.
that could have been a cartoon on HBO Max
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, it
easily.
could have I mean, it's like if you're looking at it as marketing potential, there's a lot of marketing potential there. But
I mean,
but that's also but what's funny is that that's also the weirdness of looking at these characters more as IPs rather than characters. So
yeah.
that's another weirdness that I see going around.
And I've seen some children's books that they've done from the Super Son standpoint, but like they don't even dress the same. Like they're a little bit older than the
Right.
counterparts in the comics because they're like, well, we want to write this for our young preteens. So now Damien's like 11 or 12 years old,
Right.
and like Jonathan's also 11 or 12 years old. And when they're in Gotham, like Superboy doesn't wear the Superman actual full blown outfit. He just wears an outfit that's red and
Right.
blue, but he wears like a hoodie. And it's like,
Yeah.
so now
Yeah,
he's
it's kind
Damien?
of like the company, but that this is always a criticism I had with them for both these companies. Like they don't know, as a comic book publisher, they don't haven't decided whether they want to cater the work to children or not.
Yeah,
But the funny thing is that their parent companies, Disney and Time Warner, um they look at that stuff as these are for kids. That's where the money is. That's where we're
yeah.
catering this to. That's how you end up with other weirdness like, you know, marketing Harley Quinn in children's books, but that's another rant. It's like, so it's like, but as the publishers, they're like they know they kind of have to cater like a product to children, but they really don't, because it's like they know that really well. Our core demographics is what, like 30 to 50-year olds. So it's like, so you end up with a lot of this weirdness that until someone comes in and says, look, we're going to have a division just for kids. We're going to have a division just where you're just doing these comics for the adults who want to read this type of thing.
Mhm.
And we're going to have another division to just do all the experimental stuff that has nothing to do with the main line, that people who I guess are into Fantagraphics or something can try to get into. So it's like, but instead they want to like mishmash everything together and then like kind of like hope for the best, but then they just make everybody mad.
I was laughing yesterday. I was telling somebody they were talking about the whole future state. And they were all like, okay, hey guys, here's the deal. Lucius Fox, the Fox family is going to be involved in the new future state. And one of the Fox kids is going to be Batman in the new future state thing. And I'm going, yeah, but his face is covered. So what's the
Right.
point of pitching to the fact that we got a
Right.
Batman, but his
Yeah.
whole entire face is covered? So you
Right.
don't know who he look, what it is like
Yeah.
under the mask at all. And they're
Yeah.
just, well, all superheroes' faces are covered. I said, okay,
Not
yeah,
Batman.
they're all covered, but they're
Right.
not completely covered.
Yeah.
I said, if you look at Terry McGinnis, yes, his face is fully covered. It's just got the mouth from the costume.
Right.
We're talking about full blown. Okay, you see the white eyes, no iris.
Right.
You see a mask over the face. You see all this stuff. I mean, Batman's not being concerned with being COVID compliant, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. No, really.
Uh, it's the reality of the thing. But yeah, it's like, well, you got this other guy's Batman, and everybody's like, oh, well, Bruce is dead. Nope, he's in a whole other book. He ain't dead at all.
I mean, whether we like it or not, this really is like a soap opera. It's like you might as well, General Hospital type thing. It's
Right.
like, it's like
The place
yeah, exactly.
come to heal from their mental instabilities.
Yeah, exactly.
The more you know.
It's stars.
Boom, boom, boom. The little music there.
Yeah.
The more you know. All right, so let's get ready to wrap this up.
Oh,
Now,
sure.
I enjoy talking stuff,
Oh,
I'm wrapping it up primarily more out of respect for time.
oh
Uh,
well,
and
because we could do this all day probably.
exactly. Somebody was like one day, it was like, you should do just a whole series of podcasts where you're just riffing on stuff, just randomly with people.
Oh well,
I can get a room full of people and just be like, we're just gonna riff. And we're just
oh, I don't know. I don't know.
subjects.
It's
6 hours.
it I guess depends on the topic, or else you're just going to end up with a whole room of people trying to strangle each other.
You definitely don't want that.
Yeah.
All right. So tell the fine people where they can get your wares.
Oh, yes. So, if you're interested in funny animal fantasy, in the style of Disney's Robin Hood and Lord of the Rings, you can find all my work at Tall Tales, TAILS online.com. Where you can, if you sign up for my newsletter, you can get the first 3 issues of Tall Tales for free as downloadable PDFs, along with
Okay.
being able to read the series on the website as well.
Mhm.
And when you sign up for the newsletter, you'll also be reminded when my Kickstarter for my other book, Egoraven, Heir of the First Unicorn, premieres on Kickstarter January 4th, 2021, which you can also read for free. There's a link at Tall Tales online where you can also read. So a lot of free stuff on my website.
What's
So,
wrong with that?
so you can check me out there. I also have a YouTube channel where I feature like art tutorials and demonstrations. I have an entire series about my process about how to make comics. It's like, I don't want to say like, this is what you have to do. It's like, no, this is
Right.
my process, and you can like pick and choose whatever you can use out of it. So that is at Daphne Lage Art, and Lage, Lage, misleading 4 letters. So it's like, it's Daphne Lage Art. And that's where you can also find my rant on Comic Blast, which is more snarky than ranty. But
Yeah. And as we talked about too, now that they've kind of come back and said, well, hey, maybe we should have done this a lot differently.
different. Yeah.
I'm going to pitch you the way I would have done this.
Right.
Had I been the guy that was like, okay, hey, Will, we got this thing called Comic Blast we're going to put out there. Okay, so here's the idea. We don't pitch it to the general masses at all first. What we do is we say, hey, DC, hey, Marvel, hey, Dark Horse, hey, IDW, hey, whoever other publishers we want to talk to. We're going to allow you to use this for free for the next 6 months. Okay. What we want from you is we want critiques. We want ideas on how to make it better. So that way, when we launch this, we have you guys telling the world.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because then guess what? When you've got Jim Lee telling you that the tweaks can be made, but this is really a great idea. If you're the independent person that's out there if you're trying to produce stuff for a portfolio as a writer,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you need help producing that stuff, but you don't have the super chops to be able to have the greatest artist on it on the world. You can produce your material, put your script in, let it be read, and then print that stuff out. Have an artist come in on top of that and lay that out for you. And then we can look at your writing prowess, for example, how you carry a story.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And you have somebody like, say, a CB Sapolsky come out and say, yeah, a lot of our people have been using it, and there are certain deadlines they couldn't hit. And so they were able to help hit their deadlines quicker with Comic Blast.
Right.
Adobe.
Yeah.
And then that way, when we got it, then we're like, well, if Jim Lee loves it,
Right.
well, if Brian Michael Bendis loves it, well, if Noelle Stevenson likes it for her stuff that she's doing, she's kind of indie, even if beyond that, been beyond that for a while.
Right. Yeah.
You know, these people are able to use this program. Why don't I go check it out? You know,
Right.
and see what it is. And then that way they've got they've backwards made it better just by
Right.
having
Yeah.
people
Exactly.
who have been doing the job in the pros, and they say, hey, for this is where it can go. This is what you can do with it. If you're
Hmm.
a mom that wants to, if you're a mama that wants to write your script and then have an artist come in and have your kid in the comic book, this is great for
Right.
you. You know,
Right. Yeah. That it's like it's easy enough for just the hobbyist, but it can be also used in a
Mhm.
professional setting, which, yeah, I mean, to tell you that's Clip Studio Paint, honestly, right? It's like,
It's all it
although,
does.
yeah, because Clip Studio Paint, that's exactly what they did. All these Japanese artists and all these manga companies, they use this product is standard for them. I think they helped develop it.
Yeah.
I think it's from a Japanese company, so it's like, so this was literally a program built on the back of Photoshop and Illustrator by actual comic book artists.
Mhm.
So it's like, yeah, that's why it has the reputation that it has, and Comic Blast has the reputation that it does.
We're not sponsored, by the way. This is not a sponsored
Oh, no, no,
podcast.
not at all, not fun.
However, if you're a Clip Studio Paint and you want to sponsor conversations about by all
Right.
means, I would not say no at all. I use the program now myself, so I love it. There's still a lot I've got to learn about it, but I do enjoy using it for what I've been able to use it
Yeah.
for. So there we go.
Yeah.
So Daphne, it has been a pleasure
Thank you.
talking to
Thank
you.
you. It was a pleasure talking to you too. I mean,
I've
it was
enjoyed
fun.
it.
Like I said, we could continue doing this for another 7 hours.
Right. But I've
But I
got
think
another
we
interview.
both have things to do.
Yeah, we've got stuff to do.
Yeah.
It's like It's like I have to constantly tell myself when I get to a wrap up point. Don't bring up other points that you can go down rabbit
Oh,
holes.
yeah, I
Don't do
know.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
But thank you so much for coming
No, thank
on.
you very much.
Um, when we get closer to the Kickstarter and then
Mhm,
other things you launch in the future, if you want to come
mhm.
back and we'll talk about
Absolutely,
it, we'll do it.
absolutely. Uh,
Anything we can to promote your work as we're going. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have just joined us for another fun-filled conversation about conversations about dot dot dot. You fill in the blank. That's why the dot dot dot's there. So, above all else, guys, do me a favor. First of all, thank you for being a part of this. One, and then two, be blessed and be a blessing to somebody, guys. Take care.
Bye.